please consider supporting the show on patreon.com/papichulamin or on PayPal. This is a small progressive channel. I'm doing this stuff on my own, man. All the research, all the editing, and all my videos get partially or completely demonetized. So it's really a struggle. If you can give $2 a month or $5 a month or even $7 a month, that would be a huge help. Any support would be really welcomed and appreciated. Thank you so much. So, the new poll from UC Berkeley just came out, and Bernie Sanders is once again at number 1, leading the pack. So this is wonderful news. This is part of the trend we've been seeing, with Bernie Sanders also in first place in Iowa and New Hampshire, and now tied neck and neck nationally with Joe Biden. So let's take a closer look at this poll right now and show you where everyone's standing. So we got Bernie at 26%, Elizabeth Warren at 20%, and Joe Biden, barely making the 15% threshold. And Booty Juggalo is at 7%, with Michael Bloomberg at 6%. So this is the UC Berkeley Institute of Government Studies poll. And if you compare with the previous polls that they did, there was about 2 of them, one in September, one in November, you can see it's not looking good for a lot of the candidates. The only one who's actually on the rise is Bernie. His trend has been going up and up ever since June, all the way to January now. He's the only one that's been rising consistently. And another significant thing here to note, the Sanders campaign announced Tuesday it would launch its first ads in Super Tuesday states, spending $2.5 million between California and Texas. So this is a huge buyout of ads. Of course, nothing in comparison to what Michael Bloomberg is doing. I mean, that guy's a billionaire and has tons of money to spend, but this is very significant. The Sanders campaign knows they need to win big on Super Tuesday, and they are investing accordingly. Sanders has been propelled to the top in California by growing support from voters who label themselves very liberal, a shift that has come largely at the expense of Senator Elizabeth Warren. That very liberal group makes up about 1 in 3 Democratic primary voters in the state. So just to reiterate what that means is that you have 1/3 of the people polled who identify as very liberal, others just liberal. Now, personally, I would change that term very liberal to lefty, because that's a more accurate reflection, but okay. Along with strong backing among Latinos and young voters, backing on the left is enough to give the Vermont senator support from 26% of voters likely to take part in the state's March 3rd Democratic primary. His gains in the state come as several polls in Iowa and New Hampshire, the states with the first contests of the primary season, also show Sanders gaining ground. So as I just mentioned, Bernie Sanders, he's doing great everywhere. He's doing great in New Hampshire, in Iowa, and we're just about to have those primaries. And now he's doing great with California as well, which is very significant because California has the largest amount of delegates to be gained towards winning the nomination. And as this paragraph also says, Bernie Sanders does great with Latinos and with young voters. So Bernie Sanders, he's the number 1 candidate for Latino voters. And he doesn't have, however, the best support with black voters. But when you poll young black voters, then yes, he is number 1. He even beats Joe Biden. So that's very good for him to be polling number 1 with Latinos, especially in a state like California. Okay, so not just generally, but especially in California, where you do have a large Latino population. That's very good for Bernie. That's a very enviable position to have, which I'm sure the other candidates wish they did. Okay, because you need support from people of color, you need support from blacks to win this nomination. It don't work otherwise. Okay, it don't work any other way. When the poll last surveyed California voters in late November, Sanders and Warren were bunched tightly together. Since then, however, he has gained and she has continued to lose ground. The Massachusetts senator now has the support of 20% of likely voters, down from 22% in November and 29% in September. So you guys remember in fall, Elizabeth Warren, she was skyrocketing. She was doing great. She was the darling of the media, number 2 in all the polls. And she was having this very steep rise and actually holding it for a while, It was looking kind of grim for progressives. But yeah, that came to an end. Okay, if you're going to have that momentum, if you are going to rise in the polls, now is the best time to be in that position, not 4 months before the primary. In September, Elizabeth Warren was doing magnificent in California. She had 29%. But then in November, 22%. And now 20%. And that's a steep decrease, okay? Going from 29 to 20, yeah, that's not looking good 1 month before the primary. And This is with everything. We're not just talking about California. We're talking nationally and in all the other polls as well. Some polls, she even went from first to fourth place. And as I've pointed out before, the most significant thing, polls aside, is of course the fundraising, where she's also doing very badly, okay? Also came in fourth place last quarter. My feeling is that her campaign is done for, okay? It's just a matter of time before she drops out, perhaps right after Super Tuesday, because that will be the final nail in the coffin when she emerges from Super Tuesday and sees that, I didn't do as well as I hoped. So Joe Biden, he remains the frontrunner nationally, but in third place in California with 15% in the poll. I mean, I don't understand, honestly, how Joe Biden is still considered the frontrunner. We just did a video a few days ago saying that Bernie Sanders is now the frontrunner with him. They're tied statistically. And how is this guy the frontrunner if we keep seeing him at third place in polls 1 month before the primary or 1 week before the primary? This guy's the frontrunner? Man, that ain't looking good, okay? That ain't looking good for Mr. Biden. Biden narrowly trails Sanders among voters who call themselves somewhat liberal, moderate, or conservative, but runs 33 points behind him among the very liberal. Yeah, of course, because Joe Biden is anything but a lefty. Matter of fact, I'm wondering why he isn't running in the Republican primary. Sanders, Warren, and Biden are the only candidates with enough support currently to win any of the state's delegates to the Democratic nominating convention this summer. Under state Democratic Party rules, delegates go to candidates who get at least 15% of the vote statewide or in a congressional district. The rest of the Democratic field remains far below that threshold in single digits. So you need at least 15% during the day of the actual primary. Below that, you ain't getting scrap. Okay? And honestly, this is why I don't understand candidates like Andrew Yang who just don't drop out already. I mean, there's no way you're winning this. You're dreaming. You're on crack if you think you're winning this primary. It's not happening. I don't think he will win a single primary out of any states. And the thing is, like, yeah, okay, if you were polling in single digits, like, you know, in September, and now you had a really sharp increase, then okay, cool, but you don't. You've been stuck at like 3% the entire primary, and it's just about to take place. So I don't know why you're wasting your own money and everyone's time and fracturing the vote from a true progressive. Makes no sense. Despite his third place position, Biden has a point of strength in the poll. He remains the candidate the state's voters are most likely to say would beat President Trump. About a third of likely primary voters say so. Sanders comes in second on that score with about a quarter of the votes, mostly his own supporters, calling him the one with the best chance of beating Trump in November. Again, I completely disagree with these people who think that Joe Biden has the best chance of beating Trump. You are living in a alternate reality and a fantasy, and I can guarantee you if Biden gets the nomination, he is 100% losing against Trump, most likely in a landslide. Okay, so if you have any money you're willing to bet, go and put it on Trump if Biden gets the nomination, because ain't no way in hell he is beating that orange clown. It's just not happening. Now, I actually saw a headline earlier, which is probably the most ridiculous thing I've read all week. It said, Bernie Sanders is leading polls in Iowa and New Hampshire, but is he electable? Who's electable then? Amy Klobuchar, who's polling in 6th place? Who is electable then? If not him. Who is electable? This is just ridiculous. And by the way, add California to that list, all right? Because he's polling now in California at first place. This is just mainstream media nonsense again. You know, they want to tell you that up is down and right is left. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Even if Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, they're still going to be like, is he electable? The dude won 23 states last time against Hillary Clinton. Never mind little schmucks like Amy Klobuchar and Booty Juggalo. Okay? So what is this nonsense and not electable? We keep seeing this almost every video. Just look at the matchup polls. Look at the leak that came from Donald Trump himself saying that he's afraid of running against Bernie Sanders. That question of electability has dominated the debate in Iowa, which votes in caucuses on Monday, and in New Hampshire, which holds its primary February 11th. In California, the issue of how much of a priority to put on picking an electoral winner sharply divides voters. Overall, 53% of likely voters give priority to picking the candidate most likely to win. 47% go with the candidate who agrees with them on the issues. Okay, so what they're saying here is that when these people were polled, 53% of them, the most important thing they look for in a candidate is, can this candidate beat Donald Trump? 47% were more interested in, does this candidate actually align with my values? Which is the logical, sensible, rational way to pick a candidate. Okay, good that at least almost half of likely voters in California got some sense in them. Okay, so registered Democrats call picking a candidate who will win in November their top priority. Voters who don't register with the party but plan to vote in the primary lean toward a candidate who agrees with them on issues by 57% to 43%. Non-party voters are able to take part in California's Democratic primary. So that's what you call an open primary, where you can come and vote, but you don't need to be registered with either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. You can vote as an independent, so to speak. Now, I'm not surprised that most people who are registered as Democrats would buy into the whole vote blue no matter who nonsense. Because, you know, this is what the media tries to brainwash you with. And, no, don't vote for Bernie Sanders, who's going to upset the establishment. No, vote for Joe Biden. He can beat Donald Trump. Vote blue no matter who. Voters younger than 30 who heavily back Sanders overwhelmingly favor a candidate who agrees with them on issues, 80 to 20%, while voters 65 and older who tend to back Biden say by 72 to 28% that picking the most likely November winner takes priority. Yes, so I'm not surprised that 80% of voters under 30 are concerned with the issues and policy, as opposed to these people over 65, most of them Joe Biden supporters who just care about defeating Trump. I mean, how senile can you be? Okay, you got rid of Donald Trump, and then what? And then what? You're going to have someone like Joe Biden who does nothing about climate change, caters to credit card companies and private health insurance companies and big pharma? Okay, you got rid of Trump, and now what? You still have no healthcare, you still have no action on climate change, you still have no $15 minimum wage, you still have no marijuana legalization. What then? You're going to have 4 more years of nothing, and then you're going to piss people off so much they vote in someone even worse than Trump? What kind of absurd, stupid logic is that? Do these people not see past November? What about after November? You need to be picking a candidate based on what policies they support, not based on identity politics or if they can beat Trump, because the mainstream media brainwashed you into thinking that. If you really want someone who beats Trump, you got to pick the one who really, really beats Trump, Bernie Sanders, who is also, surprisingly, the best one on policy. You see how those two actually go together? Because no one is going to vote for Joe Biden when he's offering them nothing. He will not sway Trump voters. He will not sway independents. He's not bringing them back, okay, by offering them nothing. It's not happening. You need the guy who's offering the best systemic reform to actually convince people to leave Donald Trump. You need to actually give them a better alternative. Warren and Klobuchar voters divide on whether their favorite candidate or Biden is the more electable. Buttigieg's followers give the edge to Biden. Okay, so these people are smoking very good crack. The emphasis that Sanders' backers put on issues gives him a strong position. A question mark for him is whether anything happens between now and the primary that might dampen turnout. I highly doubt it. Okay, the guy had a heart attack, bounced back from it, bigger than ever. The guy got attacked by Hillary Clinton, by Barack Obama. Senator Warren came out trying to accuse him of being a sexist. He bounced back from every single one of those, and he's doing better than ever. Sanders' lead relies heavily on groups who don't always show up to cast ballots, including voters younger than 30, 54% of whom favor Sanders, and Latinos, among whom he leads Biden 38% to 18%. So you see that? Bernie Sanders has more than double the support that Biden does among Latino voters. That is amazing. And it's very good, but he needs to work on his black support. We keep talking about this, man. This is a very, very valid and important critique that we have to make. You cannot win the Democratic nomination without support from black voters. It doesn't work. Biden leads among some groups that tend to routinely vote, such as voters 65 and older. He has support from 22% of them, compared with 16% for Warren and 14% for Sanders. I'm not surprised that Bernie Sanders only has 14% of support from voters 65 and older who've been brainwashed by the Cold War and, all this anti-socialist rhetoric and think that Bernie Sanders is going to open up gulags or something. I'm not surprised. Now, what they're saying, though, is very true. Young voters have way less turnout on voting day than older voters do, and that's a problem. I'm supposing that many who are watching this program are millennials, and you need to go out and register to vote, and you need to make your friends and your family register to vote, because statistically, yes, young voters don't actually go out to vote, and it's stupid because they're the most impacted by these issues. They're the ones who have to live with the consequences of who gets in office. So you can't just let that pass by. And as it said in the previous paragraph, 54% of young voters support Bernie Sanders. That's his base. If his base doesn't come out to vote, he's in trouble. Sanders' support among younger voters has been steadily growing over time. Because of this, turnout will be extraordinarily influential in determining the outcome. Again, to reiterate, younger voters, you need to register to vote and you need to get out there because that will have the largest impact on voting. Okay? If all young voters actually went out and voted, they would decimate everyone else in this primary and give Bernie Sanders the nomination just like that. It's all about turnout. Okay? Please register to vote. Go to voteforbernie.org and check your state because the deadlines are really, really, really soon. California's March 3rd primary will allocate 416 of the state's 495 convention delegates, by far the largest group from any state. The rest are elected officials and others who attend as unpledged so-called superdelegates. In addition to California, 13 other states will hold contests on March 3rd, and all about 40% of delegates to the nominating convention will be allocated that day. So do you see how significant California and Super Tuesday in general is? So March 3rd, you are going to have 40% of all delegates being allocated to candidates that day. So you are going to have a very clear picture of who's done, who's finito, and who can actually keep going in the primary. And this is why I think you will see a few candidates dropping out right after Super Tuesday, because it will be very crystal clear to them that their candidacy is going absolutely nowhere. Now, I'm not sure about Elizabeth Warren because I have a feeling that she has an ego that would make her keep going and holding on to her candidacy just to fracture the vote and spite Bernie Sanders, even though it's clear that she can't actually win it, just like Hillary Clinton did to Barack Obama in 2008. The primary went all the way into the summer. So that's possible. And definitely Joe Biden is going to keep holding on because, he thinks that he's the front runner. But I'm really hoping that these fringe candidates like Yang and Tom Steyer and Booty Juggalo will just finally piss off and drop out of the primary after Super Tuesday. Now, what's very interesting here is the allocation, what they think is going to happen. So none of the major candidates do strikingly better in some parts of the state than others, the poll found. Sanders currently appears likely to cross the 15% threshold in nearly all the state's congressional districts, while Biden would do so in only about half of them. Warren would get delegates in more congressional districts than Biden, but fewer than Sanders. So they're overtly admitting to you that in all of the congressional districts in California, the only candidate who would actually cross the 15% threshold and get delegates is Bernie Sanders in all of them. Joe Biden, the so-called frontrunner, isn't projected to do that in even half of the congressional districts. And Warren does better than Biden in some congressional districts, but not generally. So basically, she's in third place. I mean, they're just admitting to you who the true frontrunner is and who's projected to get delegates from every congressional district. I hope so in any case. Now, again, this poll, just like the ones we've seen all week from Iowa and New Hampshire, they just confirmed to us that Bernie Sanders is on the rise. He's surging, and at the perfect moment, right before the primary is about to start. Because this would have been great, to see this 4 months ago also, that Bernie Sanders is in first place, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything because a lot of these candidates, Biden was at first place, Warren was at first place, they all dropped down. And the only one who has consistently risen is Bernie Sanders, meaning he's gaining real support because his core base, they ain't going anywhere. So the only thing that's happening is he's either picking up more people or he's staying where he is, but he ain't going down. You can't sway Bernie Sanders voters by attacking Bernie Sanders or him having a heart attack or something. It doesn't work because they're loyal to him because he has the best policy proposals. He has the best platform in this election. There are no alternatives. He's the only one. So anyway, we'll see what happens in California on March 3rd. And in the meantime, I'm very excited for Iowa next week, February 3rd, and for New Hampshire on February 11th. If you aren't registered to vote, go and register to vote. Okay, voteforbernie.org.